I don't think there's a neighborhood in New York that changes faster than the East Village. Rent, the musical about gentrification in the neighborhood, was written in the early 90s and is now almost as dated as its source material, La Boheme. This was the hub for the beatniks and the hippies and the punks, the center of Bohemia, the capital of the counterculture, and among the first places in New York to get a Starbucks and a Kmart. This was once an aristocratic neighborhood of mansions and gardens. These 4 houses are all that remain of Colonnade Row. There were 9 that stretched down Lafayette. Residents here included the Astors and the Vanderbilts. By the Civil War, this area had turned to manufacture. The buildings became factories and warehouses. Today, this elegant row is home to one of off-Broadway's longest-running shows, the Blue Man Group. And across the street, what was once the Astor Library is home to the New York Shakespeare Festival. Those theaters are old mainstays compared to their new neighbors. What used to be a parking lot you could walk through on your way home is now a luxury condo building, and you can't walk through this. Initially, it was called, and I fear it still is, Sculpture for Living. There are 39 apartments, and the cheapest was $2 million. You'd think if you paid $2 million, your building wouldn't have to have such a dorky name. And where do you live?
Oh, I live in the Sculpture for Living. Hey! Hey! Quit laughing! Hey, listen, I paid $2 million for that place.
This is the site of the Astor Place riots. In May 1849, there were 2 productions of Macbeth playing in New York. One starred Edwin Forrest, an American actor performing at the Bowery Theater, whose audiences were mainly working class. And the other starred William Charles Macready, a British actor performing at the newly built Astor Place Opera House, which catered mainly to the upper classes of New York. There was an organized movement to prevent Macready from performing. Opening night was ruined when objects were hurled at the stage. On the second night, all hell broke loose. Not only was he chased off stage, but the 20,000 people crowding the streets started attacking the building. The National Guard was called in and ordered to fire directly into the crowd. Over 20 people were killed and at least 100 wounded. It's considered the biggest theater riot in the history of the world. Now a Starbucks, but what isn't? What was a Wanamaker's is now Kmart, and what was for years Astor Wines will soon be a Walgreens. And who knows what this will become? This Barnes & Noble at Astor Place is slated to close at the end of the year, and with it goes a piece of history. Because right here, on this site, was a reading by the writer Robert Westfield.
Who?
On August 7th, 2006, Robert Westfield read from his debut novel, his very first reading, and almost all of the 80 copies were sold that night, which is pretty good for a first novelist.
I've never heard of him.
Robert Westfield, he wrote Suspension.
I've never heard of him.
Oh, okay. Well, that might say more about you.
No, I read a lot. I've never heard of a writer named Robert
Okay,
Westfield.
well, some people say that it's the most important public presentation in the neighborhood. The second is Abraham Lincoln's speech at the Cooper Union.
Well, him I know.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about him next. You've never heard of Robert Westfield.
Robert Westfield? What is that?